Great. So it's great to see so many coming and still joining for our first more in-depth discussion on the open source map application that we are developing. And I just want to quickly give an intro also for the people that haven't maybe seen the kickoff meeting. And then I think this should really be about discussions on these features that we want to implement. So let's just have a quick view what we have planned for today. So I will give very, very quick basically like intro on where we are, what we want to do, and then Ethan will show some of the first mock-ups that we created for this map application. Hopefully we will have a lot of discussions, so this meeting should really be about discussions. And then Anastasia will show after that some of the latest features that we have worked on the map application, the code. So let me just go back to, I just want to show like 3 slides from the kickoff. So the app that we developing, that map application, actually is part of a broader project that we call Clean Air Advocates program. And basically what we want to achieve here is that we want to create a platform that really incentivizes and motivates people to, in the end, like getting more aware of air pollution, and then also like hopefully we can motivate towards like basically reducing air pollution or being more aware of it and helping create an impact. So the first step towards this is that we said, let's develop together as an open source project a really good and intuitive map application, so that no matter where you live, you can basically see what's the current air pollution levels in your city, for example, but also provide you really good information about the health impacts, that you can, set certain notifications and potentially also have some kind of forecasting to understand better like how the air pollution, for example, changes like tomorrow and so on. And I think one of the key aspects, I think that's also something where we want to differentiate ourselves from a lot of the other applications, that we want to really highlight the community organizations on the ground, because most of the time they actually do a lot of work to getting these monitors deployed, to make sure they work, to make sure they stay online, that they are accurate, and providing the data. And we want to really use that application and also to give these organizations like a platform to advocate for their cause, and to inform people in the community or nearby what they are doing, and inviting them to help. And then once we have that step, we actually want to focus more on this community engagement and see like, are there ways that we can then incentivize individuals, for example, towards working to lower their air pollution, reducing their carbon footprint, and kind of more really going into potentially like building a bit like a social network, basically connecting members within the community, and also the communities with each other to work on reducing air pollution. So that's everything I prepared right now, just for like the bigger picture. And maybe I can just hand over to Ethan to show like the mock-ups that we prepared, and then it's really open floor, and then hopefully we can have a really good discussion on that like kind of proposal that we have prepared, and what are your opinions there. Maybe you have some new ideas, and also feel free to use the chat as well if you have any questions or any ideas. I will keep an eye on the chat, or just unmute yourself, ask your questions and so on. But yeah, even I hand over to you.
Cool. Thank you, Ahim. And thank you, everybody, for joining. It's great to see so many people here. So I will just share my screen. Can everybody see that? Okay. Awesome. So I've been working on some initial mockups for both the application and the web view. And please keep in mind that these are very much just intended as kind of wireframes. I'm not a designer, so there's definitely some formatting issues here, but they're intended kind of as a skeleton or a wireframe of where we want to go with this. So this here is the initial map view. This will be quite similar in terms of functionality to what we currently have with the AirGradient map. And we have already done some work on this, which Anastasia will show later. But basically, this will be the default map view when you go to the map page. And here you'll be able to scroll around the world, look at all of the monitors, and also set things like different averaging periods. So you can see the latest readings from the monitors on the map, or see averages from the past 24 hours, 7 days, 1 month, and later on, hopefully longer periods too. We'll have some layer functionality. I think here we might add wind layers, and perhaps later on we will have other layers as well. And then have search functionality if you want to search for a specific monitor or location, and also the ability to change between what parameters you show. So I think at this point that will probably be the AQI as defined by the US EPA, and also PM 2.5. I believe we will also have CO2 included there. So from this view, if somebody clicks on one of the locations, we go to this highlighted view. And this highlighted view, again, functionally is quite similar to what we already have, but it leads on to something more, which I'll show in a minute. But basically here, you can see the monitor location, the monitor name, the type of monitor, whether it's a reference station or what we're classifying as a small sensor at the moment, which would be like an AirGradient monitor. You can see the reading. This will be able to be swapped between the AQI or the PM 2.5 reading, as well as the graphs. Please keep in mind again that this graph is very much just a placeholder. So this isn't what it will look like in reality, but it will have these guidelines and hopefully some averages. We really want to bring the contributors into focus here. So we want to really highlight that down the bottom. And then from here, we also want to have perhaps some information tooltips just to better explain like the AQI levels, the thresholds, and give people a bit of a better understanding as to exactly what they're seeing. Now, at least what I think is the most interesting part is we also want to add a detailed view. And at least for now in these mockups, I've added a button here on this dialog pop-up, and that will lead to a dedicated page for the monitor in question. So in this case, I just made an example monitor where I'm currently staying in Hanoi. And you can see here that it shows both the overall AQI or particle concentration, depending on what the user has set the setting to, alongside the individual pollutants. For some monitors, we won't have all of these individual pollutants because they don't monitor everything, in which case I guess we would just hide them and perhaps change this layout a bit. But for like a reference monitor with all of these parameters measured, we can show them all here. Again, we want to show the contributor name, or if it's an organization, perhaps even have a link to them here, as well as the graph, again, which will be changeable between showing like the past 24 hours, the past 7 days, the past month, and so on. So this here is where it starts to get a bit different. And it's also where we've had some discussion. At least in this initial mock-up, I wanted to add a cigarette equivalence. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but there's a very rough calculation that 22 micrograms per cubic meter of PM2.5 is roughly equivalent to smoking one cigarette. So we have this here, something that I guess is more relatable and that is easier to understand than just giving AQI numbers and also perhaps concentrations. However, we're still looking into the science behind this and whether it's something that we want to show. So I also had a few other mock-ups, such as indicating how high or low compared to the WHO guidelines the current concentration is. The icon is very much just a placeholder at the moment, as I wasn't able to find anything better. Another example that we could potentially put here is the current air quality compared to like the annual average. So it gives people kind of a bigger picture as to where the air quality currently stands compared to what they would breathe over 1 year. Very importantly, we also want to give some advice and ways that people can lower their risk or lower their exposure to these pollutants. So here we would have some suggestions and some general health advice. Over to the right, at the moment, what I had in mind for this was basically a smaller version of the map view that I showed earlier, something like an embed. And this would allow users to see not only the station that they currently have selected, the station that is shown on this detailed screen, but it would also allow them to see nearby stations. So for example, in this case, you could see that this red monitor down here is probably being impacted by a lot of local pollution and may not be indicative of the air pollution in the general area. So I think this is quite important just for identifying if there's any monitors that might be showing like abnormal readings. Maybe somebody's having a barbecue next to it, and just to get a bit more context on the situation in the area as opposed to just the single monitor itself. Below this, we really wanted to highlight the communities and organizations that are active in air quality in the area. So this here would be a highlight section for them. If, for example, the monitor in question was being run by a community or an organization, a community group or an organization, then this section here could give a brief introduction to them, have a picture, and also lead to a page to learn more about them. If it is like an individual's monitor, then this section here could perhaps lead to a group, a community group, or an organization in the region or in the country that's active in air quality monitoring. It's not exactly defined yet where this would lead, like if it would be a page within the site or within the app or their own page, but that's something that can be determined later. Underneath this, we wanted to have something like a heat map. So basically, this would show the historical concentrations of PM2.5 or perhaps AQI for the past 4 months. And it would also be scrollable. So people could go back and see the historical air quality probably for a year or more. This would be something, I guess, similar to what AQICN has, where each day is color-coded. So for example, one day might be red, and that would indicate unhealthy air quality, depending on the average concentration that day. And then the day before might be a green day, and so on and so forth. Underneath this, I wanted to add the nearby monitor section, which would show probably some of the same monitors that would be on this map here, but it would also pull in other nearby monitors, again, just to give more information and a bit more context as to how the air pollution situation is in the general area, as opposed to just seeing information from the single selected monitor. Finally, we have like a list of the most polluted cities. Actually, I want to bring this example. I want to highlight this example. And this here would basically compare the location of the currently selected monitor. So let's pretend I'd selected a monitor in Auckland, and it would compare it to the most polluted cities at that given time. Again, just to give a point of comparison to the user and to see where their city or where their location currently stands worldwide. I also had two, I guess, suggestions here, and one was that we use the cigarette equivalents again, just because I think it's quite an interesting thing for people to see, and it definitely generates a lot of attention from what I've learned. However, again, we're still looking into the science on that. So another idea that I had was to compare the cities based on how far above, or in some cases below, the WHO exposure guidelines they are. So yeah, here you see another example. If my currently selected location was Bangkok, it would show that compared to a certain number of the most polluted cities at that given moment. Finally, for this page, we also wanted to have a very clear call out to everybody who's contributed to the project. I'm unsure where this would currently lead, perhaps to the initiative's landing page, but we definitely wanted to give thanks to all of the contributors. So we wanted to include that somewhere on the page. So I can zoom out a bit now. And yeah, if you have any feedback, I would love to hear it. Basically, the point of this was just to give like a general overview of what we want the basic, or I guess initial platform to look like, and also to discuss what kind of functionality we want to have in that initial platform.
Great. Thanks, Ivan, for the overview. Yeah, I really want to open the floor here, and it's great. I see a couple of people I know, and I also know they actually work with communities like Paolo or Abid. So I guess you also have a lot of like, experience, like what could be interesting for, for the citizens, for the communities. So maybe that could be a good start to maybe get a bit of your feedback, and then everybody can chime in or also use the chat. I keep an eye on that and can bring that forward. But yeah, maybe Abid, do you have some comments already that you want to share?
Yes, well, actually, I have two sets of comments, but I think I'd address the first one, which is coming from the community perspective and having used, of course, like all the different various platforms that are there, so Purple Air, IQ Air, Clarity, and being exposed to how they work, and even some others, is this is a front end which is consumer facing. So as an owner, say, of the monitor or managing community who are using the network, like the challenges that we face are in downloading the data, in giving ownership. You addressed that earlier, that like to engage the community, but like if one problem that we have in various platforms, that only like I can be the owner of, like whether it's 10 sensors or 100 or one, but so I wouldn't want to share my credentials. So give people access to a subset of monitors that, okay, like I mean, hypothetically speaking, like we have potential cases where our organization is managing the monitors, we own the monitors, but there's a school and they have two of our monitors, and they actually need to have an independent ownership of the data and access, and to know, is the monitor offline, and get their own alerts only for their network, which is a part of a bigger network. So, like, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that the back end, I don't know if that is really planned, because I mean, I know that, of course, like the AirGradient will be able to be managed via this platform, and you won't be able to do that for other data sources. But let's say if we are to connect Purple Air, or whichever some universities made a sensor. If you can't manage like the monitor itself, like, you know, firmware and whatever, but if through the API, the data is coming there. Similarly, there's a lot you can do with just this data stream. So breaking it beyond like the owner to like having sub-owners. The other comment I have is more general, but I'd like to hear more from others before I revisit that.
Yeah, maybe I can just clarify one thing a bit first. So at the moment, we pull in data from OpenAQ and also the AirGradients, which are also on OpenAQ, but we want to pull them in directly because we have more up-to-date data than basically available. But yeah, I think you raise a really good point. Like this kind of admin interface, I think that's something we can work on. Yeah, it's definitely there, but obviously we don't have that much control on third-party monitors then. But I think one thing we could probably do is like something like a really nice view, like are the monitors online, the uptime, there are certain visualizations if certain monitors drop out more often or not, and maybe QA, QC on the air quality data. But it's really good that you bring this up. But yeah, I also agree, like are there any more comments from the community? Okay, I just see one thing in the chat. Will the model and manufacturer of the sensor be included in this display page? So you know it is coming from an AirGradient versus a Purple Air. I think that's a really good point. I think OpenAQ has that data, the provider name. Yeah, I think even we should probably list that somewhere. And I think that's also something which is important more now backend than, because we know that some of these monitors use different like PM modules, for example, so we might need to use different calibration processes as well. Good. Are there more, let's say, comments at the moment? Yeah, you can just. Okay, Michael, perfect. Go ahead, please.
Yes, a couple of questions. Have you explicitly defined the target audience and the implicit knowledge level of the users of this site or app?
Even you want to share
And-
some thoughts on that?
Well, as you make it more complex and use technical terms that require knowledge, your potential user base goes down exponentially. So I'm not against it. I have been a data scientist all my life, and I love the technical aspects. But if we're trying to maximize impact, perhaps the first screens that come up that are seen should be much more friendly and dumbed down. The equivalent cigarette smoking is an incredibly dramatic, powerful motivator that if I showed that to any mothers of children in my area, they don't need to know anything else. If they saw that their kid was doing the equivalent of 5 cigarettes a day, suddenly they become very active. They're very motivated, and then maybe they'll drill into the technical, and they will definitely tell their friends. They will pass the word. That could be an amplifier on effectiveness by a factor of 100.
I think that's a great question. And the intention of this app is, or website as well, is to spread awareness. And that is in particular why I wanted to include the cigarette equivalent, because I've seen firsthand how much of an impact that can make. Like, for example, my mother, who never really had a care about air quality, when she was traveling, she actually traveled to South Africa, and she asked me what the air quality was like because she could see that the haze, that it wasn't very good. And I looked at Shoot I Smoke, a website which converts like air quality into cigarette equivalents. And I gave her that number, as opposed to the PM 2.5 concentration. And she was wowed. And ever since that day, she's actually taken air quality a lot more seriously. So I firsthand seen the impact that this particular stack can have. So I definitely agree that we should try to make it accessible to everybody. The one potential issue with the cigarette figure is, like I said, we're still trying to look into the science behind it to make sure it is a reliable figure to have. And that's why, as a backup, I suggested, or I think Ahim actually suggested, having the air quality in comparison to the WHO guidelines also as a figure. But overall, I think that your idea is great, and we really should highlight kind of these easy to understand metrics and try to bring them to the forefront.
Even if the cigarette is a rough estimate, as long as you're blatantly transparent about that, the confidence level or the uncertainty or the source of why it's just an estimate, if that's clearly upfront, then you still maintain all your credibility and get most of that impact. And of course, have the ability to click or immediately see the pure technical things that you have great confidence in.
Yeah, I also put something in the chat. We have our graphics designers also working on some really engaging visual representations on the air quality that you can see in the chat, which I think Michael also addresses this a little bit, like how can we, visualize that pollution levels a little bit better. That's probably something we're gonna share in more detail later on when we have a bit more advanced stuff there, but it's definitely something that, yeah, we also working on in parallel. Great.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, go
Paolo,
ahead.
yeah, Paolo, go ahead, yeah.
Sorry, I just couldn't find the raised hand. I've also used that cigarette in my education programs. It is a very powerful tool. In fact, I even have it on my website, I think. I can't remember. Just with regards, we in South Africa, so we have a whole lot of issues from the major power stations in the center of the country to the severe sugarcane burning in the area that I live. And we're currently in our black snow season, and which started on the 23rd of April, and we have strong inversion layers. We're in day 5 of inversion layers, and our PM counts are in the 30s and 40s already. So anyway, there's a lot of very interesting stuff that's come up on the map, and there may be a little bit of an overlap with the app that's coming. But and I'm going back to the older map because I have a lot more experience on the older map than I have on the new map. But a lot of that stuff has been brought into the new proposal here. If you click on a monitor, it brought up your bar chart, and in the bar chart, it would have your WHO guideline as a blue line at 5, and it would have the rolling average where that was 24 hours or 12 hours there. Would it be possible for the user to add their country statistic that is necessary? For example, our shocking South African standard is 20 micrograms per cubic meter for 24 hours, and 40 for 24 hours and 20 annual. So if we could put it in as a user additional line, because it's just a solid line and not a rolling average, possibly that's there. Then because I've looked at this one and I'm playing with your new map, if there are reference monitors and co-location monitors, for example, we have 6 co-located in Richards Bay with the government monitoring system. The AirGradient unit and the government unit are basically standing on the exact same spot. Which one would take preference, the reference or the AirGradient? Just a couple of other issues. Where you clicked into where the street map is there, If we were in South Africa and you did that, you wouldn't pick up anything because the closest monitor is probably 10 kilometers away if you're lucky. And how we started off, we were in an area of 10,000 square kilometers devoid of any monitors. So useful in the Northern Hemisphere, not so sure in Africa and Southern America, whether that would be there. Maybe a simplified version of that zoom in, or zoomed in to the closest possible references, if the clever computer guys can write that code. And then on the question of the most polluted cities, I see you did do one for your local, but maybe like your dashboard is customizable, maybe it could be possible for the user to customize to have it against the national localities rather than everything, because there's a lot of information to digest there. And if we could simplified, as was said by the previous speaker, I think it was Michael, I think that our experience is people want a quick fix to a question. What you're giving us is fantastic for us as an organization to then go and further educate. But to the basic user, possibly, I hate using the term, we can dumb it down to a simpler version of this. That's my input. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Paolo. I think that's very helpful, and I mean we are making notes of everything, and I think also what even is presenting right now is kind of like the maximum version. I mean, it will go step by step when we implement this, and some of the features will take more time than others. Are there any other people
I
that
can agree with that. I agree with that. I personally, in all my projects, aim high and then scale back. So I see the work that's done here and I understand it. And again, like the improvements that you've made on your dashboard, maybe it's about customization and just simple click saying, I'm a basic user and zoop, and I'm an intermediary Zoom user, and bring in more pieces and advanced even more. Possibly something like that.
Yeah. Actually, this reminds me on something we discussed internally, but we forgot to mention it here. We're also thinking, let's say, if you open the app the first time, that you have something like an onboarding thing, and then it can ask you some questions, also finding out, like, how do you want to get the air quality communicated? Like, are you a scientist? Are you a normal person? Like, are you more interested in health-based information or more into quantitative things? And then based on a few questions, you basically then adjust the user interface. That's something we have on our mind, which could then address that issue as well. I see that Niels, you raise your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much, and congrats on the plans for the UI. That looks very exciting. I was just wanting to understand one point regarding the mockups that you shared. For like what I would call like a regular user, it's probably likely that they're interested to like find out about the sensor that's the closest to where they are and like periodically return to that sensor, rather than like checking like around what like other sensors are. I think that's something that probably needs to be considered a bit in the flow as well. And specifically for the low education on pollution, I think, yeah, it's super important to not overwhelm the users. Like even the list of other cities I could see as quite controversial. because if you end up in a period where you have high variations and suddenly the air quality is good when you check the monitor, but you see all the other cities are much worse, then it might be like, okay, well, you know what, like it's actually not that bad, and you kind of forget like what is the local. I would like Cher, who is also on the call, if you could comment also on the cigarette example for the Senegalese context. I don't know if it's something that's universally understood and a point of reference everywhere. Yeah, I would definitely strive to, even if you choose at some point to, or you have some intro that you need to go through before you can see the map. I think like it's like more that switch for advanced user that we can have somewhere. But like the regular interface really needs to not assume any understanding of pollution, AQI, and also like what we saw is when users see the data, they don't have any reference for the meaning of the number, but also they don't necessarily understand that that number will change every day, or like it depending on very specific situations, that it will actually fluctuate a lot. And I think that kind of is also important. Also, this time element to make sure that it's really, really clear. For example, the night and day schedule, if it can be also visual on the graph, what is a day and what is night? Because to some people, when you show a graph, and it takes a while until people even understand, okay, what is the scale? Is this showing a day? Is this showing like the last few hours? Is this showing a week? And I think this is really important in places where you might have like traffic, because like within 2 hours you can have a situation which is completely different, and the user might not be checking the data in 2 hours. So those were just a few remarks.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Niels. Maybe we just jump over. I think Abid, you raised your hand next, and then Paolo. Just collect feedback now. Maybe that's the best way right now. Thanks, Abid. I think you're muted.
So
Yeah.
about the smoking part, look, I'm sure it's very different in different environments. When I started in Pakistan, 2016, nobody knew about air pollution. The thing is, when you put the number of cigarettes, the conversation kind of ends there, and it doesn't engage people. But when you talk about it, it's air quality and air quality index, and you kind of like, yes, you invite them to look deeper. And I have done like workshops at kindergartens, universities as well, and I've always found that the cigarette thing works well on social media, but like when people want to use the app and get more information, it's really they're interested in the AQI and not even like the actual concentration number. So just putting it out there. The other thing I wanted to say, which is unrelated to this, is that look, this like when new products are being made, and there's like the saying, it's like death by committee. If every single feature is going to be crammed into here to meet every single person's requirements, it'll not do anyone's job well. Like somehow this needs to be really pared down to the basics. It needs to have a great like it needs to have like 2 or 3 things, and that is it to start off. And what I'm really missing over here is that most people are consuming the internet or websites on their mobile phones globally. It is in certain circles where people are sitting behind a desk in an office, but like people in Pakistan, myself also, like, I mean, everyone I know, they're consuming information first on their mobile phones. I go to my computer to do work. I'm not looking at stuff. So unless if it's mobile first and it works brilliantly on a mobile, like the website, like that it works on a desktop is the secondary target. And that's, I mean, in my opinion, that's what I'm missing in this mock-up as well. So I had in that earlier introductory workshop had shared the example of the app Pico, I believe. I mean, it's such a beautiful app. It just does one simple job and it does it really well. I understand that it's not enough, that even me as being part of this community want a little bit more out of it, but I think it's a good place to start from when you look at being mobile first.
Ethan, you want to quickly show, we actually have a mock-up for the mobile. We forgot to mention that. I totally agree with that, by the way, Abid. And then, Ethan, you want to quickly just show that's there, basically, and then we can hand over to Paolo, who is waiting for quite some time. Yeah, it's basically, Ethan, you want to say a sentence on that?
Yeah, sure. So functionally, it is essentially the same as what I just showed for the website version. You can see kind of the initial mock-up here, and obviously all these things down here would be what you would scroll up to see. So again, we have the AQI or the concentration. This would be defined by the user during the onboarding process if they prefer to see particle concentration or AQI, some meteorological information, the graph, again, the cigarette equivalents or whatever we settle on to put here, along with the health advice that you can take to lower your exposure, a community highlight, and then the section here will be heat maps for the previous months, and then just highlighting the open source project and contributors. So yes, this was just an initial mock-up of what the app or what it might look like on mobile.
Thanks, Ethan. And maybe just one more sentence, Abid. You raised a really important topic with this dev bike committee. And we are in a bit of a catch-22 situation because on the one hand, yes, we want to make sure, you know, we listen to the community, we get the feedback, we basically use the power of the community. But in Germany, we say too many cooks, you know, make a bad meal. So I think that's something we just need to balance out as well. And at some point, we might also just run certain surveys, you know, that we say, hey, like, there are a couple of proposals, and what does the majority think to make sure that we kind of stay focused. But it's something I think we are aware of. And but on the other hand, I think it's super important, like having meetings like this to really understand different perspectives on the whole thing. But I totally agree that this is something we need to keep an eye on, and also to really keep it simple and very, very impactful at the beginning. So without further ado, Paolo, you are waiting for quite some time, so please go ahead.
No, I need to learn patience because I normally jump in too frequently and too often. Just I fully agree with the previous two speakers. I do think that it needs to be as simple as possible. If I can just give you some feedback from the schools, for example, we have monitors at 1 or 2 schools, but the children who the teachers then take on the exercise, and the monitors have been in there for a year, and they've sort of developed their own plans. And the feedback to me is that the children actually are more interested about the monitor closest to their home. So when we started looking at possibly designing an app, the discussion that we had and the coder that we were using was basically saying that they could write a code that the information from the closest monitor or weather station would be brought in for the user. Possibly that can be done. So when you default to yours, it comes in as simple as possible, and then maybe you scale up with information. Because I think the message coming from people with experience that have spoken before is it needs to be simple. It is what you've done is fantastic for us who've been working for years with it, but the average user is probably going to take years to get to understand what you're delivering, because what you're delivering I have to go to about 3 or 4 websites to actually even get that information. So I understand what you're trying to achieve, but it goes back to the user. And we have some communities where, for example, we have a major landfill site that emits odors all the time. They are so tired of filling in forms and things like that, that the community has just now reduced itself to saying bad smell, 7 o'clock in the morning, and that's it. There is no information. And I, as an attorney, can't use that information because I don't have the wind directions, I don't have any of that. So if it were all built into there, I have multiple functions that I could use, but the user would just want to, for example, click and see that the PN count was thing, and then complain there's a bad odor or whatever it is. I would then pick up on a GIS map or whatever, and it would roll out something like that. I know this is overlapped with the app with regards to the map that we're doing. So I think there's quite a bit of overlap between map and app. Okay.
Yeah. No, I can say it, like, totally agree. I think what our aim is now to maybe understand the full picture, because we need to also see what different stakeholders might need. And then we have to really think, and maybe that could be an exercise for the next meeting, to say, okay, what's the most simplified version for, let's say, the average person out there, and how can we really focus on creating an impact and making, like, really communicating the air quality well, and all these different facets that we mentioned with, you know, like, it changes over time. And I think notifications, we didn't mention that today, is probably a big part of this whole thing. Good. I'm just having a look on the time a little bit, because we have one more topic with what Anastasia wanted to propose. I'm not sure if there's anything. I mean, we have a lot of comments in the chat, which obviously we will take into consideration, and also send some feedback around after the meeting together with the video. Maybe what we could do, just to make sure, because I'm a little bit conscious with the time, maybe if people have more comments, they can put them into the chat right now, and then I would say maybe Anastasia could maybe quickly show what you were working on, because we want to also then invite people a little bit. I know there are a couple of coders here as well, to like, get a little bit more engagement on the GitHub thing. So if that's okay with you guys, then yeah, maybe Anastasia, you can go ahead a little bit.
Thank you, Achim. Hi, everyone. I'm Anastasia. I'm a software developer at AirGradient, and in terms of this project, I'm mainly responsible for the front-end part. So I wanted to share a little bit with our progress for today with this project, and also I wanted to give some technical background and clarify one thing, that there was some confusion, at least in our GitHub repository for the front end. Basically, you all know probably our map, yes, that we have on our website, and there was some confusion, like we already have pretty much functionality on this map, and why do we have, for example, tickets to create URL persistence or something like this that already work on this map. So basically, to clear it, about a year ago, I think, yeah, we launched this map, and it was technically implemented as a part of this website, our main website. And as the website was and is built now with a static set generator, we didn't have too much freedom in terms of dynamic components. And so basically all we could use was just plain vanilla JavaScript here. And for this level of functionality that we currently have in this map, that was enough. sufficient, but considering the functionality that we would like to add right now, what we've just discussed, and also mobile versions, of course, the technologies that we use in this website, they're very not enough, I would say so, and it is not that scalable that we really need. So that's why one of the major decisions was to switch to different code base. And as tech stack, so the main framework that we use for the front end right now is Next. So Next 3, and I really like it. So yes, and based on this information, we can separate the development process of the map right now into 2 stages. So the first one would be just to transfer all existing functionality into this new map and to replace the current map even on the website with a new version as soon as possible. And then the second stage will mostly include the enhancements, new functionality, and pretty much everything that Ethan has shown to us. Yes, so basically right now we are at stage 1 here, and we are bringing the functionality here into the new code base, and you can see this is the, just a second, yeah, here we have already deployed the map in the new code base here. You can already play around. The link is attached to our GitHub profiles, or I can also share it here. Yes, and what you can see in this tab, this is my local server, and I can share something that hasn't been deployed yet. So I have almost finished the transition of the historical data information here. You can see we have pretty much similar charts, but they work smoother. So it's just a pleasure how the animations work with the new code base. It's very, very comfortable for the eye. Yes, so this is mainly what we have right now. And despite the fact that right now the focus is mainly on transitioning the old functionality, you can already see that this new map is more advanced, because you can see this clustering functionality, because we didn't have it in the first version of the map. So it zooms in and out and provides the clustered data, and then you can jump into the local areas. Yes, so this is the stage we're at right now, and the next steps will also include transferring legends, some additional information, providing legends on different markers. Yes, also add CO2 map, of course, as we have it here. Yes, so I think you all know the CO2 map. Yeah, also potentially the layers, and of course the corrections, the calibrations, because right now they're not implemented yet, but we will definitely include the EPA calibration at least.
Perfect. Thank you, Nastya. So I think that was important for us to really show that, yeah, like everything that, for example, Anastasia is developing is directly committed to that public GitHub repository, so we don't have any internal one anymore. We also would like to have really all the discussions on GitHub. And I want to quickly show this to maybe wrap this up. Maybe I can just, thank you, share my screen again. If I find, okay, this somewhere around here. So you might have seen, so we have our public GitHub repository. There are two ones for this project. One is the backend, it's called Map API, and the other Map Web. And what I really want to invite everybody here, like we really try to use that internally as well, with like issues that we create here. For example, you can also see then, for example, what Anastasia is currently working on. And we have, for example, also the on the discussion, we have Ethan's mockups in there. And I would really invite people to start, yeah, like making comments here. We can have a lot more ongoing discussions that I think we will move some of these things that we have in the chat here to some of these discussions and tickets, just to make sure we're not losing any important information. But I would like to just say, like, really invite everybody here to make use of that public GitHub infrastructure and engage and yeah. And also, if you're a developer, obviously there are a couple of issues. If you're keen on programming as well, like it would be great if people pick up some of these issues, that this is really becoming a real community project. Maybe one more thing. Next week we're gonna have another session discussing the mobile stack, I think, which will be very interesting. I had a couple of conversations with a few people in the last couple of weeks. Should we go for some cross-platform tool, or really like Kotlin or Swift? It's great that I think we have a couple of real experts in the community now, and I'm looking forward to this one as well, because in the end I think it boils down to a few things that we mentioned here, that we want this app to be, you know, like super smooth, super fast, super impactful, and I think that's where the mobile stack, I think, also plays quite an important role. Good. Let me see. Okay, there's 1 minute left. So let's try and move this conversation over to GitHub. And I think we're also gonna have, I mean, obviously follow-up meetings as well. So we're gonna send something out together with the recording, like a summary that and then hopefully we can continue the discussions on these channels, also potentially in Discord, wherever, you know, people feel it's most effective to contribute. Not sure if there's any last quick statement from anybody to say. Otherwise, I just want to wrap this up on time. Everybody happy so far? Yeah, good. Because for us it's also an experiment. I mean, we have to see, like, what's the best way to manage this. But I think this was super helpful. I think a lot of really good comments also in the chat, and I'm looking forward to the next meeting, especially on the UI UX side, and see how we can take these inspirations that we have here, and also very valuable feedback, and put that into something tangible. And so I think we can all look forward to that. Great. So thanks a lot, and yeah, and then see you soon. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Bye bye.